The entrails of Billy Thomas had been found in the Conecuh National Forest near the southern border of Alabama. The forensic team of Andalusia, Alabama concluded that the entrails in question belonged to the aforementioned Billy Thomson, who had been reported missing 3 weeks prior by his mother. A hunter had discovered the upper half of Billy while hunting in the forest, if only because a coyote was trying to drag his carcass to its den. This was the first time a body had been recovered, and on this body was a tape which held Billy's last words. I invite you to join me on this Lost Tapes episode and enjoy this prelude for the Church of Syn. I know. My stupid mom told me a dozen times not to go camping this weekend. As stupid as she was, I can't help but feel she was still smarter than me. I just graduated from high school. On my way to college, me and my buddies decided we'd run off and go camping before the summer months wind down and college starts. But geez, I wish I would have listened to my mom. She told me about the Grey Ghost and the Church of Syn, about the disappearances, about the bodies, about the government telling people to not go camping. And you know what? That just made me want to go camping more. Seriously, there's 6 of us, and Smudge. We brought pocket knives, switchblades, a few machetes, and I think Pete even brought a gun. Alice, she brought a can of Bearre mace, and so, if anything, the Church of Syn should be afraid of us, right? I was wrong. Definitely wrong. See, I think it was August 21st, maybe our 3rd night out camping. I don't know, but anyway, that night I stepped out of the tent to drain the vein, and, Smudge came with me, and on my way back, I saw a series of canoes paddling down the stream. I freaked out because they were wearing dark gray robes, just like the people said, and one of them was standing up. He looked pretty tall, had a white bushy beard, and he just seemed terrifying. I was standing in the bush, maybe about 20 feet away, so I don't think he saw me, but then I saw that same tall guy point at our campsite, and then they beached their boats. I wish I would have done something, but there were at least 12 of them, and then that tall man pointed at me. He saw me. Though Billy did not mention how many people were with him in his lost tape, the lead detective on the case, Andrea Parker, had figured out he was with at least 6 other people. 4 males, 2 females, and Billy had also brought along his pet dog, a black lab named Smudge. The only good news pertaining to this case is that Smudge was found alive, though slightly injured, and returned to the Thomson family. Aside from being filthy, the only issue Smudge had was a sprained left hind paw. His coat was combed for evidence, but from what the forensic team could deduce, Smudge had been wandering the forest for at least 3 days before he was discovered, thereby rubbing off any possible evidence into the forest in which he was found. Once the lost tape had been reviewed by the forensic team and duplicated by Detective Parker, the tape was forwarded to his mother and then submitted to me. Billy's mother refused to post her story to the online Church of Syn forums, as she knew this would cause a fervor, as it has done so with other similar cases. However, Channel 8 News persisted for an interview. Billy's mother remained anonymous and refused to give an interview, but unfortunately, the families of the other college students did not relent. Billy's lost tape was stolen and published to the online forums for all to hear, and unfortunately, like the many cases preceding his, it gained national attention. Detective Parker, reluctant to answer the phone, still did so and was pressed for interviews. She refused to do even one and kept the finer details of the case to herself, one of them being that Billy had a long cut on his left arm, which began at his shoulder and ended at his elbow. I didn't even know Smudge was right next to me. Good thing, though. There's animals skulking around out here, and I'm pretty sure Smudge would at least be able to scare off a coyote, but a snake or something, I doubt it. Anyway, I saw those cultists climb out of the canoe, and one by one, they removed my friends. But worse than that, the tall man, he kept his arm raised, and then he pointed at me. I didn't know what to do, so I stood there like an idiot. It's dark outside, at least 2 in the morning, and there isn't much moonlight. It's a crescent moon tonight, so the forest, it seemed darker than usual. Bleak shadows were everywhere. And then, from my right side, I felt a hand grab my neck, and a rag that smelled awful smothered my face. Everything went black, and then, next thing I know, I woke up. I was on a stretcher. I saw the pile of pink ice and the meat sitting on top of it. I heard them walking around me, but I closed my eyes. Suddenly, they lifted me into the air, and then I was placed on a wet table. I opened my eyes and saw a girl who was, if the context of this situation wasn't horrible, she was just gorgeous. Black hair, blue eyes, and she didn't notice me as I looked at her. She held a scalpel in her hand and pushed against my left shoulder. I was too terrified to move, but once the blade split the skin, I glanced at her. She looked like she was like she was in this dreamlike state, like she was mentally like somewhere else, you know? Like, you know the old saying, the lights are on but no one's home? That's what it was like. God only knows why I laid there for so long, but she traced the blade to the bottom of my elbow before I couldn't take it anymore. I swung my fist, and it connected with her temple. I sprinted for the forest, and the tall man pointed at me. That guy people have been talking about with a bowl haircut, he started chasing me. I whistled for Smudge, and he bolted out of the forest. After investigating a 5-mile radius around the location of where Billy's carcass had been found, the forensic team had discovered the location of a small campsite, though the site was bare. The table and pile of ice mentioned in the lost tape was missing. However, blood had dried on the grass and soaked into the soil. DNA analysis had concluded that there were at least 9 individuals at this camp who had been, processed, and they had found a trail of blood which led into the forest. Detective Parker followed the trail of blood, and about 7 miles away from the campsite, they discovered the corpse of a man who had been reported 5 years prior. Stranger than that, this wasn't the bold haircut man either. This man had short black hair, a mustache, and wore glasses. At the time, no one knew who this man was, but upon further investigation, it is believed his name was Martin Nathaniel, an Italian man who was reported missing 5 years prior with his family. It is believed that Martin was abducted and joined the cultists, though Detective Parker made it a point to separate fact from fiction. This was the first plausible indication that the Church of Syn was real, and that this was their first cultist. However, what brought about his death appeared to be strangulation. The forest seemed darker tonight than any other night. Smudge went right after that bowl-haired guy and bit into his arm pretty good. I called him back, and then another man started pursuing me. I ran deeper into the forest, but he seemed faster than I was. I thought about, what could I do, and called Smudge back to my side. I love him. He's such a good boy, but that guy, I couldn't shake him. As I ran, I removed my pack and dug through it for a bungee cord. I brought a couple of them to fasten the tent down, but man, if I could get this wrapped around his neck, I might be okay. I grabbed the metal hook of each end with each of my hands. I wound the cord around my hands, and as I ran, I suddenly turned around and leaped onto the poor jerk and wrapped the cord around his neck. I wrapped it around once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, and then I felt something sharp in my gut. It hurt, but I pulled the rope. Smudge, he started barking. The guy, he stabbed me again and again into the side. I pulled at the cord until the man stopped moving. Eventually, he did. I didn't uncover his face. I didn't want to see him. I stood up and then my side hurt even more. The pain was excruciating. I tried to run, but I couldn't. Smudge pushed against my side with his nose and started to whimper. I tried to run again, but I couldn't. I slowly walked away, and then the world, it started to become cold. I think I'm bleeding out. That's why I'm making this tape. I think I'm bleeding out. So Mom, I love you. Know that I'm here with Smudge, so it's not like I'm going to it's not like I'm going to pass on alone. I'm laying against a tree with him, about 50 feet away from the cultists. Mom, I think the Church of Syn is real. I think the gray ghosts are real. I love you, and good night.
Detective Parker deduced that the reason Billy's carcass was discovered so far away from the cultists was likely due to an animal dragging him. The flesh wounds on his abdomen were reminiscent of an alligator performing a death roll. She believes that an alligator had been nearby, consumed his lower half, scared off Smudge, and a coyote had dragged the top half of his body about 3 miles away from the cultist. A small den had been discovered about a mile away from Billy's carcass, and based on the trajectory of the coyote's movement, Detective Parker deduced that the coyote in question was moving Billy's carcass to its den. Billy Thomson had been officially declared dead. A closed casket funeral was held on September 4th, 2022. Detective Parker had tampered with the crime scene so as not to excite the conspiracy theorist, and declared in her official report that the carcass of Martin was in no way related to the homicide of Billy Thomson. She had made a deliberate effort to create distance between the reality of the case and the mythology of the Church of Syn. As far as she was concerned, the last thing Andalusia, Alabama needed was another case to talk about, or another ghost story to tell. However, her report did not supplant the fanatical nature of the Church of Syn conspiracy group, and they used her reports and proof of falsified documents, which now caused the Church of Syn to transition from being a sensational myth to a government cover-up. And naturally, this made the call to support the Church of Syn conspiracy more appealing. The Church of Syn conspiracists enjoy nothing more than outright denial, as in the world of conspiracy theories, denial is truth, and truth is denial.